Today marks 1 year, 365 days of going live with you. And I want to actually lean into this today and really talk about it because there's been a lot that I've learned throughout these last 365 days that I want to share with you. Things that actually have very little to do with the act or I guess you could say participation of going live, but it's much more so life principles that have come up throughout this time. And I want to share them with you because they have really significantly changed me and significantly made an impact in my life. And so it's all centered around this question of what does it take to be brave, and what does it mean to be brave, and how can we position ourselves to live a brave life. And so as we have this conversation tonight around courage, I want to start from this place of, what does it actually take and what is required to be able to exist in this place from one of courage. And there's a couple of different things that came to mind as I was thinking about tonight. And the very first one is, do we have a purpose? Do we have a mission in life around which we've centered our vision and our values? And that's the aim. We've even ideally orchestrated our profession, our family, our friends around a mission, something that we feel so called to, something that energizes us, something that is effectively a North Star, so that our compass is navigating north towards that thing, towards that aim, based on kind of our heart's song and our heart's calling. And so that's the very first question before we can even say, okay, well, what does it take to be brave? And I'm going to go and become one of courage. Well, why would we even do so? So having a why and understanding that is so deeply rooted in us, that it so deep so that it propels action, that compelling why is, gosh, it has to be the most important part of this whole question. What does it take to be courageous? What does it take to be brave? Do we have a compelling why? And y'all, I found this to be so true for myself and for so many that I've worked with and spoken with in the knowing retreats. I'll hold these, couple days where we'll all get together, these intensives, so to say. And people will come for 3 or 5 days and we will stay together in the same home. We'll have dinner, breakfast, lunch, we'll work out together. And then in between meals, we will do the hard work of really coming to know who we are. And that that aspect of what is your why has been one of the most stabilizing forces in people's lives, so that when they do need to go and enact courage or need to rest on bravery to kind of move them through something that's challenging or painful, they have a why that is like the gasoline in the tank that powers them forward. But y'all, if we don't have that, there is no way we can show up the way that we need to and do the hard things. There's something in regards to courage and bravery, it almost begets the fact that something is going to be hard, something's going to be challenging. It begets fear, because otherwise we wouldn't need courage, we wouldn't need bravery, it would just be something that we're doing. And so the very fact that, like, kind of embedded in this concept of courage, it requires the fact that we are going into hard places. And I want to read, I love this speech by Theodore Roosevelt in 1914. He gave it in Paris. And there's embedded in this speech this section that is famously known as the Man in the Arena, but the lines leading up to his speech, where he delivers this one aspect around what does it look like to live as a man and a woman of courage, they're so very compelling, because he's speaking to people who kind of are like more or less so middle class, where they've had an element of luxury and an element of ease to their life, that he's reminding them to not rest on their laurels, to continuously enter into the arena, enter into a place that requires us to be courageous. And here's the thing that's so interesting, is that our arena is going to look very different from each other, because our mission is going to look very different, and who we are as individuals is very different. So how can our arena not be different? But if we're fixated to the right and to the left, and we're looking to everybody around us to define how should I live my life, well, then gosh, we're never going to be playing in our own space. We're never going to be entering into the arena of our soul, of our mind, of our body, of our spirit, even to cultivate ourselves and grow and master the courage that is necessary for us to live out our unique call and mission, kind of like our unique North Star. So one is, what is the why? And then two, well, what is kind of the path forward and the how to? But before we get there, I just want to read this section of his speech by Theodore Roosevelt, 1914. It is well if a large portion of the leaders of any republic in any democracy are, as a matter of course, drawn from the classes represented in this audience today, but only provided that those classes possess the gifts of sympathy with plain people and of devotion to great ideals. You and those like you have received special advantages. You have, all of you, had the opportunity for mental training. Many of you have had leisure. Most of you have had a chance for enjoyment of life far greater than comes to the majority of your fellows. To you and your kind, much has been given, and from you much should be expected. Yet there are certain failings against which it is especially incumbent that both men of trained and cultivated intellect and men of inherited wealth and position should especially guard themselves, because to these failings they are especially liable, and if yielded to, your chances of useful service are at an end. Let the man of learning, the man of lettered leisure, beware of these queer and cheap temptation to pose to himself and to others as a cynic, as the man who has outgrown emotions and beliefs, the man to whom good and evil are one. The poorest way to face life is to face it with a sneer. There are many men who feel a kind of twisted pride in cynicism. There are many who confine themselves to criticism of the way others do what they themselves dare not even attempt. There is no more unhealthy being, no man less worthy of respect than he who either really holds or feigns to hold an attitude of sneering disbelief toward all that is great and lofty, whether in achievement or in that noble effort which, even if it fails, comes to second achievement. A cynical habit of thought and speech, a readiness to criticize work which the critic himself never tries to perform, an intellectual aloofness which will not accept contact with life's realities, all are marks himself that he never, or all marks, not as the professor would feign to think, of superiority, but of weakness. They mark the men unfit to bear their part painfully in the stern strife of living, who seek in the affection of contempt for the achievement of others to hide from others and from themselves in their own weakness. The role is easy. There is none easier, save only the role of the man who sneers alike at both criticism and performance. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold, timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Y'all, this is when we talk about having a why that compels us to move into the arena, that allows for us to dip our toe into what does courage feel like? What does courage cost me? And have a why that propels us even further so that we're not just dipping our toe in, but we're willing to move beyond into the arena where we will taste triumph and taste defeat. And here's the thing about the arena is really solely just encompassing you and me against ourselves. Once we start looking to the right and to the left, that's when we really start to fail. That's when we start questioning, well, am I good enough against their own measurement of success? Am I good enough against their standard, against their expectation? But when it's you and me against ourselves, looking at our calling, being so focused on what is my mission? Why am I here? Now, our going into our own arena is now just you and me against ourselves. And did I do better than I did yesterday? Am I actually going to be courageous, moving forward on this path that I know that I need to defeat in me the parts of me that need to die so that I can grow and be able to walk even more fully tomorrow, so that I can love better and lead better? And as a result of that courage, we then can leave the arena and go and engage with the horizontal world around us. But it is only when we recognize, one, do I have a why propelling me forward? That do I have a North Star? Do I engage? Then the next part is, do I go into the arena and actually practice and cultivate and allow for myself to grow so that I can fulfill on this mission? And then do I have the ability to be so laser focused, like a horse with blinders on, that I can't even see the standards of others, the expectations of others, because my standards are so high for my own self, it's me against me. And here's the thing about this is that when it is us against ourselves, now when I am wondering how much further I have to go from where I am today to where I need to go tomorrow, now I'm not measuring myself against everybody else, but I'm actually looking, yes, at where I am today against my vision, but I also am looking back at how far I've come. Now it's not just our mission pulling us forward, but it's the gain pushing us ahead. It's powered by gratitude, and it's powered by this deep appreciation and humility of, oh my gosh, I can't even believe I get this opportunity to fulfill on this mission. I can't believe I have this opportunity to change every single day. Look at where I started from. I read this book called The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Such an incredible book. And it allows for us who have the vision, who have the drive, who have this thing compelling and pulling us forward to get out of bed every morning, to not live from a place of depletion or a place of lack, but rather from a place of gain, so that we're very well aware of that gap from where we are to where we want to get to. But rather than focusing and fixating and even becoming obsessed with the gap, it's like what's pulling us forward and then what's pushing us behind. What's pushing us from behind is the gratitude, is the deep-seated appreciation, because we know from where we started. It is this linear trajectory. When we talk about courage, it's a linear progression where it's, okay, where was I starting from? Where am I today and where am I going? Versus, well, here's me in the lineup, and look how many people flank me on either side. Now, all of a sudden, the goal gets distorted. My own previous destination gets faint in view because now I'm so distracted by everyone and everything around me. And so when we talk about, do we have the courage and what does bravery even look like? These aspects have to be taken into consideration. Do you know where you're going? Do you have a vision and a why that is compelling you and pulling you forward? Do you have clarity on where you came from? And then have we created our own arena in which we will practice and better ourselves and really strengthen it's kind of like strengthening the skills and strengthening the mindsets and behaviors and the inner being that is necessary to be able to go and fulfill on that mission. Before I continue, I just want to jump here in the chat. Patrick, I'm so glad to see you. Both courage and confidence are very, very important in life. I love that you brought up the confidence piece, Patrick, because honestly, I think that there's something there that, really has been, I think it actually hasn't been emphasized enough. I was actually at the World Cup game today, and there was this little boy. He was probably 4 or 5. He was probably 5. I have never seen a little boy with more confidence. And it was so interesting because I was watching him and I was like, you know what? I actually think he could literally kind of do whatever he wants. Like I actually think that little 5-year-old boy would be able to go out and do great things because of the amount of confidence he has in his little body. Taking charge, yelling, chanting out Ronaldo's name and calling him to be better on the field. It was wild. It was so funny to watch. And having the confidence combined with the courage, because otherwise confidence could just look like the critic on the sidelines. But man, if we have the courage blended with the confidence, I'm just so glad you've talked about that, because yes, that's perhaps the very cocktail we need in order to be able to fulfill on our unique callings. Egg White, good to see you. 1929, hello. Zenjamin, hello. So good. We should not copy each other. Patrick, that's such a good word. Barbara, hello. Thanks for joining. Doctor, hello. Mason, thanks for joining. Zach, hello. Max, good to see you. Hello from the UK. I'm glad you're here. XTC, hello. It says Teddy was the best. Oh my gosh. I just loved that speech. He was close to George Washington despite all of that stuff. Interesting. Adrian, I don't know if you're still here, but Adrian, I'm so glad to see your name. Patrick says courage is better than hate. Tommy, hello. He says, good morning from sunny Sweden. It's hot today. Oh, I need to do the conversion of 29 Celsius, but I do know that enough that's very hot. Patrick says humility, humanity, humbleness, and honorable behavior. That's so good. Jason, hello. Cristiano Ronaldo. What was the song? Oh, gosh, I can't remember, but everyone was like chanting Cristiano Ronaldo. Y'all, getting back to just this conversation around courage. I wanted to just kind of make a personal, I guess, draw a personal example. And I'd be curious if you guys have an example. I'd love to read it here in the chat. I started going live a year ago today. And honestly, so much of that was for my own sake. I just had this sense that I had this idea that I felt like if I would go live with guests, that could very well be a better format for having meaningful conversations rather than, and for those of you who follow the Knowing podcast, I've got 2 seasons of doing the Knowing podcast where we were actually meeting in studios in person, beautifully filmed, great conversations with amazing people, but it was expensive. It was timely. It was obviously a challenge to get the right people in the right space. The very first time I filmed, I was speaking on an event in Vegas, and I got, 4 or 5 of the speakers to gather into my room and we filmed. And so that worked out great. But then it was just limiting doing it all in person. And so I was laying actually in bed in Paris. I think it was like 1:30 in the morning in April of last year. And I just woke up in the middle of the night and I just had this idea of live streaming. And I didn't really know anybody who was live streaming at the time, but I just had this idea. And so I decided to invite guests to start going live with me. But what ended up happening was that I didn't have a guest for every single day. And so I gave myself a challenge to go live regardless if I had a guest or not. And y'all, there's something around the talk about confidence, Patrick, like you were saying, and courage. I think confidence is learned in so many ways. Sometimes I think it's just practicing and not I don't want to say pretending, but it's like, I'm going to choose. I think confidence is a choice. So it's not a pretending thing. It's a choice thing where I can choose to look at myself against everyone lined up flanking me on this starting line that we're all lined up for the race of life, or I can look at this thing, this mission of mine that I feel so called to do, And that I am choosing, I will be confident. I will choose to step into this role of who I know that I need to be in order to achieve that thing. And so for me, I feel so called to this mission, which is to bring emotional health to leaders around, ideally around the world, so that as I grow and as I heal and as I learn how to know myself for the sake of leadership, for the sake of love, so that I can be all that I was created to be in the first place. Y'all, so many of us play small. Michelangelo has this beautiful quote where he says that the thing that's actually more scary is not that we dreamed so big and that we missed it and failed to achieve our great dreams, but the thing that's most scary is that we did not aim high enough. And so we actually died at the end of our days. We look back on our deathbed and we realize I never went big enough. I never tried hard enough. I didn't actually utilize the most that I possibly could of my own skill sets, my own talents. And so much of the time we're living small because we're looking at ourselves, not you and me against us, but you and me against everybody else. And so what happens when we're surrounded by people that actually have maybe a lesser skill set in one particular area? Well, now we're judging ourselves against them, rather than if I'm up to only 40% of my own capacity, if I'm only utilizing 50 or 60% of my own capacity, that is a real shame. So we have to know ourselves well enough to then be able to set our own standards of excellence, rather than just adhering to everyone's on the horizontal. So knowing our mission, knowing ourselves well enough to create our own standard of excellence, and then creating our own arena, the arena that calls us forth and beckons us to be better, to step into the role that is necessary and create the role that's necessary, create the mindset and the behaviors necessary to fulfill on that life mission. So backing up, it's, well, why am I here in the first place? Why was I created? And so over these last, honestly, 365 days, so many conversations with other people have challenged me, and so many times where I would show up alone on the show, nobody was joining. There were so many nights where maybe I had 10 or 15 people tune in. Maybe I had 3. and it was like, is this worth it? Is this worth it for the 1 or 2 people that are finding what I have to say meaningful? Is it meaningful enough for me? Maybe nobody watches. Y'all, here's the thing. Is it worth you and me going into the arena when no one is watching? Because of what it is doing for us internally. The arena is meant for you and me to cultivate ourselves. This arena that Theodore Roosevelt's talking about, where we're stepping into it and tasting triumph and we're tasting defeat because it's you and me against ourselves. So if our measuring stick for our calling, our mission in life, our level of courage, our own standard of excellence is measured by other people's opinion, other people's expectation, other people's approval, slap on the back, man, I think that that's fundamentally going to stunt our ability to walk in the fullness, to really be able to even create, to even truly allow for our own minds to get out of the way and really ideate on something new and create something new from within. Because if we're constantly in comparison, oh gosh, was it Theodore Roosevelt who said this too? Comparison is the thief of joy. So anytime we're looking to the right and to the left, we're fundamentally stunting our own ability to create and walk in the fullness of who we possibly can be. Just jumping back here in the chat. Gloria, thank you. I'm glad to see you. Cody Brown, hello. To understand our own space, to understand ourselves. English Joe says, I love this. Carry a big stick. Yes. He had so many incredible things to say. You know what was so interesting? I watched this documentary on Theodore Roosevelt, I guess probably 15 years ago. One thing that was so meaningful to me was that when I think he was around 30 and his first wife died, and he went out west and lived like a cowboy. And he was actually, I think he was in politics in DC when his wife passed away, and then he just left everything and went out to live out west. And it was in that time where he really lived with the people. And y'all, actually, if we were to return to his speech here, I really, really love this call forth. He says, "It is well if a large proportion of the leaders in any republic and any democracy are, as a matter of course, drawn from the classes represented in this audience today." Again, it was kind of more affluent classes. So, it's great if they're drawn from these classes, but only provided that those classes possess the gifts of sympathy with plain people and of devotion to great ideals. So, the question, what are our own ideals? Do we have an ideal for our own selves? Do we have an ideal? Martin Luther King Jr. would say, "I have a dream." Do we have a dream that's bigger than ourselves? Do we have a vision bigger than ourselves for our community, for our families, for our business? Are we dreaming big enough that encompasses us and calls us forth? Do we have our own great ideals for ourselves, much less so for everyone around us? And so when we talk about this question of what does it take to be men and women of courage, of bravery, what does it take to dare greatly? Do we have a mission? Do we have an arena? And do we have a standard that calls us forth to be greater than who we were yesterday? Because it's you and me against ourselves, not against anyone else. So with that, thank you all so much for joining. What an honor to be here with you all 365 days in a row. Regardless of size of audience, even sometimes it's just been me and two people. Sometimes it's just been me. Sometimes it's me and 1,000. It's such an honor, y'all. And it's such a privilege. Every single one of us has a platform. Every time you walk into a room, people are listening, people are watching. Anytime you board a plane, people are watching, people are listening. Every time we step on camera, every time we post something online, we have the opportunity to leverage our very presence for the purpose of our mission. And the more we go into the arena for ourselves and we cultivate and we practice, the more on the other side of it we'll be ready when the time comes to have an answer for the questions we receive. So thank you all so much for joining. I will see you all tomorrow. I anticipate bright and early, but we'll go ahead and see. Today was a whirlwind going to the World Cup, which was just incredible. So I'll probably schedule something later in the afternoon, realistically. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining. I'm so grateful for the Know community and for